Well, thank y'all so much for tuning in. We're excited about this episode. We have someone who I've known for quite a long time. I think one time we tried to sit down and figure it out and just kind of got tired of counting numbers backwards. But we have Dr. John Fleming on with us. And Dr. Fleming was a member of Congress serving the 4th Congressional District. And fun fact, he was the congressman right before Mike Johnson, who's now our speaker. He was Assistant Secretary for Commerce for Economic Development, White House Deputy Chief of Staff, currently State Treasurer for the state of Louisiana. He's a veteran of the U.S. Navy, medical doctor, and business owner. Wow, that John, do you have time to sleep at all doing all this stuff?
Well, I'm busy, but to be honest with you, you'd be surprised what you can accomplish if you are organized. For instance, the people who've been working for me in my businesses, they're getting close to 30 years service in my company, and I found them to be honest, intelligent, well educated, and I put a lot of trust into them. I also give them a lot of incentives. So it's not just my company, it's our company. So they make profit as we make profit. And so I'm the visionary, of course, of everything that I do. My medical practice, which still operates today, started in 1982. And then my businesses, which include 32 Subway stores, well over 20 um, commercial properties that I own, and other businesses. And so I have people who handle the day-to-day tasks. And of course, I run the Treasury Department. That's no small thing. That's a lot to do with that. And then finally, of course, I'm running for the U.S. Senate. But really, I'm pretty much used to the pace. And yeah, I sleep about 6 hours a night. I don't really need any more than that. I'm ready to go. After 6 hours, I'm ready to get going and get the day started.
I know I've completely your Subway stores. You've gotten a lot of profit over me over the years. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to get it like 8 hours, 6 hours. If I'm going hunting or fishing, 6 hours will work. But if I get 6 hours on the day to day, I don't know.
Well, I think I trained my body to concentrate sleep because for many years, you see, I'd work through the night, manning an emergency room or something like that. So you kind of train your body, I guess, to concentrate your sleep. So I just somehow got used to not really needing that, requiring that much sleep. And now I require a little more sleep on days that I exercise. 3 days a week, I run 3 miles a day, and two days a week, I pump iron, lift weights. Uh, so I used to. I'm a third degree black belt in karate, but I haven't been able to keep that. There's no karate places close by for me to kind of
And
keep
then you're
that
on the road
workout.
so much.
Right.
And
Yeah, it's just not convenient to do that. I
sort
hope to
of
be in a position to get back in.
reminds
Running
me of
three
Donald Trump,
miles.
never stopping, never stopping.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Running 3 miles, man. If I'm running, you better keep up. Me, something's after me. So, well, we appreciate you, Dr. Fleming, coming on. So, we're just starting off with some of the questions. My first question, and it goes back to nothing with the Treasury Department or running for Senate, and we'll get to that. What was it like serving as Deputy Chief of Staff for President Trump in his first administration, and what was a typical day like?
Well, it was a huge honor. Um, Generally, it was 12-hour days. I would get there at 8 in the morning, and my office was located between Jared Kushner's office and Mark Meadows. And then across the hallway was the vice president's office. All this is in the West Wing. And then the Oval Office was 10 steps to my right. And of course, that's where President Trump was. And it was busy. I mean, we worked hard. There was a lot to do. I got there just as the COVID pandemic began to peak, and we had to get a lot of emergency rules out to deploy the FEMA for facilities that were overrun with bodies and with sick people, ventilators. We had to we had to respond to hospitals that were overrun and other things. I also dealt with the sub-cabinet level personnel issues that we had. Some people had to be brought on, some had to be fired. I was a liaison for the 2020 census, and there's a whole story with that that we can get into at some later date. I also served on the coronavirus task force with none other than the notorious Dr. Fauci, and I watched his decision making. He was a legend in his own mind, and he often was wrong, but never in doubt. Shot from the hip and called it science. We only later found out that he was funding the gain of function research that led to the coronavirus virus, and then it leaked from the Wuhan lab in China, and it killed 7 million people. So that's just part of those 10 months that I spent, of course, in the White House.
Wow. It to me, I know coming in definitely at such a turbulent time like that, but man, the I guess the sheer history of being there while those big decisions were being made, that's astounding. That's mind-boggling for me to think, you know, right there in the middle of all this, because we all remember the pandemic. We try to forget it, but you can't. And being right there in the middle of it, man, has to just be it's like historical.
Well, and it was turbulent times. Remember that Antifa and all that was going on. They set fire to a church just behind the White House. Y'all may recall that. A church where the first president, George Washington, I'm pretty sure, went to, and most presidents, if not all of them since then, have gone the day before they're inaugurated. A historic facility. And they set fire to that. So there was many things. I flew on Air Force One a number of times. One time to, again, accompany the president when he visited Hurricane Laura that hit, I believe, in 2020. And it hit really badly, and there's a lot of destruction and damage over around Lake Charles. So we did that. So spent a weekend at Camp David, which is something very few people get to do. And my wife and I, and really had an intimate dinner with the president, and really got to know him there. Again, behind the scenes, not in front of the camera, he's a delightful person, very charming, kind of guy you'd want to hang out and have a beer with. And as I say, it was unforgettable memories for me.
Mm. Wow, that is awesome. I mean, it's just someone that I've known for, gosh, John, we've tried to figure it out for a long time. Having that type of connection, that's amazing, especially for someone. Sorry for you south of I-10 folks, but from Northwest Louisiana, that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing.
I mean, just being able to be at Camp David, I think, is pretty impressive. That very few people could even get past those gates, those guards, I'm sure. Um,
Oh, you can't find it on a map. If you try to find it on a map, you won't find it.
wow.
We had to get special instructions on how to get there. And it's funny, we were there 2 days, we were told that the evening they were going to pass out popcorn and soft drinks, and we were going to watch a movie. The movie was Tora, Tora, Tora. Y'all probably remember that, an old World War II movie. So we all sat down in there, and of course President Trump came in and sat in the front row, and what they brought up was actually a documentary of his first campaign in which he won office. It went on for like an hour, and then we watched Tora, Tora, Tora. But it was classic Trump to bring up this movie or documentary, and it was, of course, all the great things that happened and the victories. I mean, it's just classic Trump. He's going to show everything that went right and everything he did that went right. And but that was kind of a kick. We had fun with that. And they have a golf course there. They have a bowling alley. And there have been historic things to happen there. President Carter, when he signed the first Mideastern Accords, that was held there. He had Menachem Begin, the Prime Minister of Israel, and then the Palestinian leader, I forget his name now. He was poisoned to death, probably because of the agreement that he made with Israel. But there have been historical things, really neat things that have happened there as well.
Wow. Guys, y'all have any other questions?
Yes, sir. So obviously you're running for U.S. Senate. I want to allow you the opportunity on this podcast to share what you think separates you from the other candidates, Republican candidates in the race currently.
Sure. Well, first of all, my background. As I tell people, I grew up in a working class home. Nothing was given to me. My dad died just before I left for college. I had to work my way through college. I worked odd jobs, got a few scholarships here, borrowed money. One of my odd jobs, a gig job, was I was a houseboy in a sorority, and they didn't pay you, but you got 2 free square meals a day, and the best chow on campus is always in the sorority houses. And I got to flirt as much as I want. So I would say I would call it a plus job, even though they didn't pay me. But things like that helped me get through. And then I was accepted into medical school. And after the first semester of medical school, I ran out of money again. But the military came out with a scholarship program because the draft had been ended. And it even exists today. It's called the Health Professions Scholarship Program. And I was the first one to sign up, as far as I can tell. I signed up the day that it was announced, and they did a physical and swore me in. But they paid my way through medical school in exchange for service. So I served 6 years in the U.S. Navy. But honestly, I would have done it for free because I so admired military members. My dad was in World War II. My uncles were in World War II. And I had the highest admiration for that. So nothing was given to me. I never inherited anything. As I say, my dad died just before I left for high school. So I had to find a way to take on these challenges. And after I got out of the military, after 6 years, looked for a place to set up a practice, and found a town, Minden, Louisiana, and set up my practice there. It flourished. And then I went on to begin opening businesses, which I've opened businesses over a number of years, and many of them still operate. But again, I never inherited that. It was never given to me. I had to struggle through it. I had to learn, and I learned from my mistakes. But again, nobody built that for me. President Obama said you didn't build that. Well, he was wrong. I built it, and I did it, with God's help. But still, I built that. So then, along about 2008, I had the opportunity to run for Congress, and I had become very concerned about the direction of the country. I had no idea it was going to get as bad as it has. So I served 8 years in Congress, but some of the notable things there is the fact that I realized that really Democrats control Republicans oftentimes in Washington. And it was really a sad thing to see, because you see people running for office, they claim to be this, they claim to be that, they claim to be conservative, they want to close the borders, blah, blah, blah. But then once they get there, the default position is to go along with the Democrats. And so people like me who pushed back against that and said, no, we're going to anchor the conservative side, we were punished by our leadership in the House of Representatives. Speaker Boehner, for instance. Well, I didn't go along with it. I would push back against things. And he tried, we're going through this redistricting situation right now in Louisiana. Well, we had redistricting after the first 2 years that I was in Congress, and Boehner tried to redistrict me out and allow it to be a Democrat district. And it was only because of the governor who vetoed that it didn't happen. But you see, it's happening again with this governor. So So anyway, a lot of us got sick and tired of that kind of stuff, and we banded together, 9 of us, and we created the House Freedom Caucus, which runs typically around 40 members strong. And we really created an anchor, and we made it where leadership can't retaliate against us because we could always go back against the leadership and kick them out of office. And some of those dynamics did happen back when McCarthy was running for re-election as House Speaker. Well, anyway, after 8 years, I entered the Trump administration. First, I was appointed to a Deputy Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services, then later Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Economic Development. I had to go through Senate confirmation for that, but I didn't have any problem being confirmed by the Senate. And then, of course, the last 10 months of the administration, I was brought to the White House. So all that's to say, I have a very broad and really deep experience. I know how Washington works. I know where the landmines are. I know how they take young people who are inexperienced and ambitious, and they mold them into their own image. I saw it happen a number of times up there. I'm the only one in this race who actually has a history, a record in Washington, except for Bill Cassidy, and we know what his record is. So I think that's important because oftentimes we hear the rhetoric from people who are running for office, but it doesn't match what their background is necessarily or who they are once they're elected. And so I think that's important. And I'll just kind of go through a brief list here and kind of turn it back to you. But while I was there, I had a 97% conservative voting record. I passed a federal pro-Second Amendment bill. Of course, nobody else has done that in this race. I was rated A+ on votes for protecting us against immigration, illegal immigration, that is. A+ rating, Gun Owners of America and NRA. So I have a solid record. No one has ever attacked me on a single vote that I've made, ever. And except Democrats, of course, but no Republican has ever attacked me because my record is very clear and very clean. It's always been up and down conservative, and I never sell out to anybody. I always do what I think is right by my conscience. I voted against every spending bill while I was there except for one. And the reason why I voted for that one was because they were gutting the military during 2 wars, Iraq and Afghanistan. And I was serving on the House Armed Services Committee, and there was no way I was going to allow them to do that. They were literally taking parts off of museum military jets as spare parts for our war vehicles, for our jets, fighters, and things like that. When it gets that bad, that's just ridiculous. So that's the only time I actually voted for a spending bill. For me, the default position has always been if I don't know everything that's in the bill, if I don't agree with at least all of the important factors of that bill, then I'm an automatic no. So these middle of the night things that you see, and then you have, for instance, members of our legislature, but also some in our delegation in Congress, they'll tell you, well, I voted for it, but I didn't know what was in it. They dropped it in at the last minute and all that. Well, they're going to keep doing that if you keep voting for it. But my default position was always to vote against something unless I was comfortable with what was in that bill, because voters are not going to forgive you for making a bad vote. It's your responsibility to know what's in that bill, or you vote against it, in my opinion. So that gives you an idea, really, of my eligibility as candidate. I will tell you this. After I announced back in December, I've been polling. I've probably done about 4 polls. And in each poll, I've been number 2 behind Cassidy. And of course, I would divide the vote of the anti-Cassidy vote with other people, whether they were actually announced or whether they were just potentially going to announce or whatever. Well, in this most recent poll that I did late last week, I've actually now bypassed Cassidy. So I'm now the leader in the entire pack. And then in the runoff, my point spread goes from 36 to 29 to 40 to 29, 11 points. So if you understand the structure of this closed primary, you've got Cassidy and you've got everybody else. And we all, of course, share the anti-Cassidy vote. And I've been the leader in that the whole time, but now I've crossed over. I'm actually leading Cassidy too and everybody else. But ultimately, assuming that Cassidy's going to be in the runoff, every time we do a head-to-head with Cassidy, I win in the head-to-head. And so I've got the polls here, and we will be announcing the results of the poll tomorrow. Basically, what you'll see is in the crowded field, it's going to say that I came in at 27%. I'm sorry, I came in at 25%. Then Cassidy comes in at 23%. And if you add everybody else that's either in the race or thought to get in the race, it comes in at 17%. So that's kind of the point spread in the poll. So I continue to grow in the poll. Cassidy lost a point despite the millions of dollars he's spending on TV. Y'all, I'm sure, been seeing the same ads I've been seeing. And so despite all the boasting and bragging and everything about money raised, actually, I'm the only one. I've grown 10 points since the last poll in July. And there was also an independent poll done in July. And I knew there was a poll out there, but it was never published, so I didn't know why. Well, somebody leaked it to me. It turned out it was done by the Advocate. And when I looked at it, I realized why they didn't publish it. Because it showed Cassidy 27 points underwater. It showed me 24 points above water, a 51-point spread. It showed me with the highest name ID, except for Cassidy, of course. And that again, in the head-to-head, I won it around 10 points. So that's an independent poll. I asked them to publish it, but they refused to do that. So I've leaked it to my friends, but I've not had the opportunity. But this poll here pretty much solidifies what that poll said back in July.
So I know Cassidy's raised, I believe it's around the 10 million figure now, and you had around 4 million before the new quarter. Have you? What are your numbers at now? If you don't mind.
Well, again, you have to know how to interpret these
Yes, sir.
reports. So basically, I put 2 million in of my own money, and then because that's quite a sum, and I can make a lot of money off that 2 million. I take it back out and put it back into my investments, and then I put it back in. So truly, what I have of my own money is 2 million, and I've raised about 500,000. But you go back to Cassidy, 90% of the money he's raised is from outside of Louisiana. I mean, he's totally in the hands of special interest.
Oh yes, sir. I'm not saying he got the money because he's a great, he's the best candidate or anything.
I know.
He
I'm
of course
just
has so much money, but I was
right.
just curious.
I'm trying to explain because people get confused. So I try to explain the true mechanics of these reports. So no, I don't have 4 million. I just basically deposited 2 million twice. That's the reason why you saw that number. And each time I take it out and redeposit it every quarter, it'll go up another 2 million. So what I'm saying to you is what I have right now is $2 million on hand. But I'm mostly, I would say I'm mostly self-funding, but so far I've run my campaign only on money raised, but I imagine I will have to spend some of my own money. But again, as you can see by the polls, the number of dollars that you raise does not at all correlate with where you are in the campaign. In fact,
Absolutely.
I'll go on to tell you that we have placed over 10,000 yard signs and big signs. Have y'all seen some around Shreveport, Bossier?
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
And we have a demand now. I'm trying to hire more people just to put signs out to respond to that demand. So we have 200 volunteers. So we're getting great grassroots response. Are y'all familiar with a guy by the name of Morton Blackwell?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, he endorsed me several months ago. He's sending a youth organizer down, so he will be in charge of our youth grassroots folks. So he's going to be helping us a whole lot too. So the amount of money you raise, it does not necessarily mean that you've got the most votes. Oftentimes it means that you're an insider to one or two big industries. So you have to be careful. I know that there's a lot of boasting about that, but notice they're not boasting about the polls, they're boasting about the money raised. And dollars don't vote, people vote. And there's another critical issue in all of this that I didn't know was going to be an issue. But to take you back to my years in Congress, I was always opposed to the climate change ideology that's for some reason we've got to spend taxpayer money on wind or solar or things like that. Now, look, if you can set up a device that uses wind that will power something at your home or your farm or whatever, I'm all for it. I got no problem with that. Same with solar. But if it doesn't carry itself, if the taxpayer, have to subsidize that technology for you, I don't like that at all. Not with a $37 trillion national debt. And it's all done because supposedly CO2 is a pollutant and causes global warming. Well, y'all probably heard by now that Lee Zeldin, my colleague from the House, head of EPA, is now getting a rule change that takes down the rule that says that CO2 is an air pollutant, because it's not. And once you take that away, that removes the justification for the subsidies for what we know now to be carbon capture and sequestration. And that was passed. Here's what happened. That was passed into law over a period of the last 5 years, beginning in 2020. Almost every House and Senate member voted for it, virtually all of them. I think, in fact, 100% of them voted for it at least once, but most of them voted for it every time. And not only does it allow carbon sequestration, which is, again, taking processed oil and gas and other products and capturing the carbon dioxide, but then putting it in pipes and then drilling it into the earth, where if it escapes, it's potentially very dangerous. It can kill people. So, but even worse than that, it was the EPA actually gave primacy to the state of Louisiana. So that's all in the hands of what used to be called DEQ. It's now called the Department of Natural Resources and Energy. And really it's under the governor, because the governor appoints whoever's head of that. So now the governor can decide which applications are approved and which ones are not. And he has the power to force that through eminent domain, and ultimately give the choice to private companies, even foreign companies, who can come in and without paying you anything can actually take control of your land for the purpose of carbon sequestration. So this was all done behind the backs of the people who voted the legislature into office. And now that they found out what's happening and these things are about to start, they are over the moon angry about this, and they're looking for people to run against these legislators for bringing this stuff to them. So again, going back to my history, I was opposed to this kind of stuff when I was in Congress. I put in an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act that prevented the Pentagon from using biofuels, which would cost 5 times what normal diesel fuel cost, that they would use for their ships and things like that. So I was able to, I have a history with this, and I've always opposed it. I opposed Solyndra, which was a boondoggle company. We were going to steal under Obama, we were going to steal the solar technology and manufacture here. And that $500 million, that factory never got stood up, and we don't know what happened to the money. It basically went into pockets, we think, of big, wealthy Democrats. But it was just, again, another boondoggle, another waste of the taxpayer money on these scams, and that is President Trump's word, not mine. These are all scams. And so that's going to be an issue in this race. I'm the only one in this race of the major players in this race who is opposed to carbon capture and sequestration. The others have been voting heavily for it, supporting it in every possible way. So we'll see how that turns out.
Yeah, carbon capture has become a very interesting topic here in Louisiana. It's getting a lot of attention from, sort of your grassroots organizations. I sort of think it was it was a green new, scam sort of policy that was sort of forced on us. And so the way I've sort of thought about it is, well, the oil company said, well, if you're going to force us to do something about carbon, which we don't think has any, because carbon's in everything, it's the most abundant, element in the earth, and but if you're going to make us do something with it, well, we might as well do this carbon capture thing.
Well,
and then they found out it was really profitable, and so now that they don't have to do it anymore, they're still doing it because of how profitable it has become,
right.
and people are upset about that.
It's extremely lucrative, at least on paper. See, it really is not. There's very few whales yet. There are none in Louisiana, but there's 33 applications in, maybe more, and they have plans for thousands of whales. So, but it is a potentially dangerous technology. There was Lake Nyos in Africa that had a pocket of CO2 that collected as a result of a nearby volcano, and it escaped. It kind of blew up through the lake, and it killed over 1,700 people and their farm animals. You see, it displaces the oxygen in your lungs. It also shuts down a car engine, because car engine has to have oxygen as well. There was a real life thing that happened, a CO2 pipeline in Sartartia, Mississippi. Now, we do have CO2 pipelines already, and this includes Sartartia. There was a leak, and this stuff looks like fog when it comes out, and you can't run from it because it spreads too fast. And 45 people were reported to have seizures, loss of consciousness, foaming at the mouth, which means pulmonary edema in medical terms, and were taken to the hospital. Fortunately, none of them died, but they could have. And these wells and pipes are going to be located as close as 500 feet from schools and homes. So the big issue is potential health problems, but the biggest issue, and it polls very, very one-sidedly, is eminent domain, where a private, not only a domestic company, but a foreign company can come in and take control of your land and put pipelines or whatever things they need to, and not even compensate you for it. And that's really a sad sort of thing. And this was done behind the people's backs. So the legislature has to answer for this, because they knew it was going on because they were voting for it. Now they act very innocent. Now they go, well, nobody really explained this to us. Remember, I told you my default position. If I don't know and understand something, I'm a no. Okay? If I'm not 100% comfortable with it, just write me off. I'm a no. But no, in fact, these legislators really kind of falling in line like lemmings, and many of them connected to the industry and could potentially benefit from it. They voted wholeheartedly for it, but yet now they're having all of these community meetings, and they're explaining the technology. Do you think they did that while they were passing these bills? No, they didn't. They did not tell the people what they were doing. And there's going to be a number of lawsuits filed. And what I've committed to the Save My Louisiana people is that if I'm elected, the first bill I'm going to drop in the Senate will be to repeal the 45Q tax credits that fund this thing, because without taxpayer funding, this goes away, because there is no marketplace. They're not selling anything. They're not giving anything. They're not doing anything. They're simply taking your taxpayer money and providing a dangerous technology, and without no justification, because the finding of CO2 as a pollutant is being removed from law. So there you have it.
Yeah, I think the the sort of liberal climate change, global warming things is what started all of this, and then they found out how lucrative it was, ran with it,
Yes.
and then I don't. Have you had any legislators from this Louisiana or anyone in the political world kind of come to you and give you their support and say, oh, maybe I was wrong, or people who maybe didn't vote for it? Do you have sort of some support on that side?
Well, let me explain it this way. I do have a number of legislators who've come to me saying that they agree with me now, even though they voted for it before, and not necessarily saying they're going to like endorse me or anything like that, but they want to work with me opposing this. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Chuck Owen from Leesville. He, I mean, every time I talk to him, he just goes to town swearing. He didn't know what he was thinking. He didn't know. He didn't understand. People told him it was the right thing to do, but he's against it now. But that's because the people in Vernon Parish are ready to kick butt and take names. The other one is Representative Shammerhorn. He collected 19 signatures from House members and wrote a letter to the president asking him to remove funding for 45Q tax credits. However, to be honest with you, I think most of the people that are opposing this now are just trying to save their skins. They know they're in big electoral trouble. And if they were really serious about shutting this down, they would call a special session and they would begin repealing these bills. And they're not even talking about that. The governor is feeling the pressure too. You may have heard that he announced a moratorium on any new applications, and they're reviewing the current applications. And there's been some suggestion that he won't make some parishes that are opposed to this, and there are 2 or 3 that have already come out with resolutions opposing it, that he won't make them do it. So he's feeling the pressure. It's affecting his support, his political support. This is a definite hot button issue that's only popped up in the last 6 or 7 months.
Gabe, I know you have a question.
Yeah, Dr. Fleming, it's a pleasure to talk to you. I just think it's a small world that my first job was actually Subway in Bossier back in high school. That was my first job. So I guess
Right.
thank you from the upper leaderships for giving me that job.
Well, my
But
thanks to my Subway and my sandwich artist. So thank you for
thank you.
artistically
And
making
and
this.
I am a certified Subway sandwich artist, ex sandwich artist. And so
Mm.
my question now, I'm no longer a Subway employee. I am now a flight instructor, an aviator here in Louisiana.
That's code
So,
for unemployed, by the way.
oh yeah, yeah. And so as an aviator myself, I'm not a typical poli sci or major stuff like that. And so as a pilot, you know, do you see any growth for aviation in Louisiana?
Well, I see a lot of growth for aviation in the country.
Hmm.
What's holding aviation back right now is the fact that our technologies are 50 years old. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Right. I completely agree
I
with
try
that.
not to think about it when I get on an airplane, but and there are other countries that are up to date on their technologies, but we are way behind. And there's a program, you probably watch this on TV, where where you see where an accident happened, and then they do an evaluation, a retrogressive evaluation. What went wrong? Was it pilot miscommunication? Were the flaps not or ailerons were not properly set and things like that. I love watching it. And by the way, one of my sons is actually finishing his flight instructor training certifications, and his next step is to be a flight instructor like you. He wants to go on and be like everybody. He wants to be hired by commercial aviators. No, I think there's lots of upside that's going to occur. But what's holding us back is there's only so much traffic that can be handled out there, especially when you consider weather events and all that. And We have got to get our technology upgraded, but I know Trump is doing that. That's high on his list. But we've been needing that for years. And,
Absolutely.
and I wish we had better connections in Louisiana. We
Hmm.
used to have a plane that would fly from New Orleans to Shreveport, but that didn't last but like a year, I think.
Well, I really appreciate that. I just know because, like you said, you hit the point right on. Our aviation national airspace is very old fashioned, and so it's good to see and hear, a Senate candidate yourself that you're in support of aviation and to continue
Yeah.
our growth in the country.
Yeah. And Sean Duffy is a friend of mine. Again, I served with him in Congress as well.
He's doing a great job.
Yeah.
I mean, you were talking about some of the legislators you had talked to. I know Chuck Owen, and he's like you. He's very he doesn't profit from being in the legislature. He spends his own money to
Right.
get there and home, and
Right.
he loses money when he goes to session. He's told me this, but he's doing it for the people, and he found out about it, and he was he just wanted to do what was right for the people, and they weren't happy about it. I guess one of the questions also I had real quick was, what do you think is like? What do you think about the sort of transition from where, especially with your time in Congress, where the left was and where they have gone, because they have gone so far away from
Yeah.
Christ, from just morals and American values that it's absurd the world we're living in now. Just to think that 10 years ago it really wasn't like that.
Right. Well, the historical line I'll draw is beginning with the Obama administration. The last, I would say, decent Democrat in the White House was Bill Clinton. And even he started out in the wrong direction, but he ended up, because of Newt Gingrich and pressure that was brought from a new conservative House of Representatives, and I think Senate too. He changed. He actually was the last president that balanced the budget. But he was drug kicking and screaming to get there. He started out very liberal, but he learned his lesson. He responded. But beginning with Obama, the party has become progressively socialist Marxist. I saw it happening right before my eyes. And here's the thing that kind of makes me want to throw up sometimes. I'll just give you an example. I was at a fundraising event for somebody else running for office, and Trent Lott was there. Y'all may remember Trent Lott, Senator Lott from Mississippi, who was the majority leader in the Senate. And he got up and gave a speech how Republicans and Democrats used to picnic together, and they'd go out to dinner together, and they'd do stuff together, and then they'd come back and they would compromise on things, and everything went fine. Well, there are 2 points I'll make on that. Number one, Democrats were not socialists back then. They actually did reasonable things that made sense. Number two, it was always understood that Republicans were ultimately going to let the Democrats make the decisions, and they would go along with them. Remember, Democrats was basically they were basically in charge of Congress for 40 years up until Newt Gingrich got into office. So really, the Republicans were like a support chorus for Democrats who were making all the decisions, and of course Gingrich upset that, and then that really, I think, ended up as Democrats became more and more progressive, more liberal, etc. And then that really accelerated when Obama took office. I mean, it just went, and that's when I took office, was the same time Obama did. And I witnessed it personally. But after 8 years I was there, the Democrats were more liberal, more socialist than they were when I got there. Today, they're twice as liberal, twice as socialist. And people complain, well, why don't you guys get together in the middle? Well, again, I'll explain to you that 25 years ago, if you look at a scattergram, you would see Democrats and Republicans, most of them right in the middle. And you would see, the extremes out here. Today, the extremes are out here, although I would say Republicans are no more extreme than they ever were. But Democrats have moved way out here. So there's nothing in the middle. There's nobody in the middle. Nobody crosses over because their ideology, you mentioned Christianity, they threw God out of their plank 20 years ago. They don't even, they're atheists, and they're avowed atheist, and the socialist wing totally controls the party. So I tell you all of this to explain that under the current conditions, there's no way you're going to see compromise. We're either going to win as Republicans and conservatives, or we're going to lose. There is no compromise, because how do you compromise with socialist communists? It just isn't. It's a whole different form of government and economy, and I don't think it's one that you want to do. Now, you guys are young, but I'm old enough to remember the Soviet Union, the beginning of course, communism in Cuba, when that was taken over, Venezuela, and in every country, in order to bring everybody to the same level, you basically bring everybody down to poverty, except for the elite leadership class and military. They're the only ones that can eat steak. Everybody else just barely survives. And that's the way it is in a socialist country. So we leave it to you, the leaders of the future. You have got to protect future generations from this socialist movement. It's really toxic.
Well, we're seeing that now with Mandani. I mean, the young people are coalescing around him in New York City, and he's just going gangbusters up there. He's going to be the next mayor. I mean, there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He's going to be the next mayor. But that brings me to, we're going into the last 10 minutes of this podcast. A lot of our people who listen to us, they're younger, my age, Coy and Gabe and Justin's age. And that's one of the things we've heard about candidates. And that's one of the responses we got, because, we put out a brochure, not a brochure, advertisement that we were going to have you on. And that's one of the questions that we got is how is Dr. Fleming going to be able to reach out to young people as a candidate for U.S. Senate? So what is your ability to reach these young people, to have them come out and vote? Because Gabe has said this before in a past podcast, Gen Z, they're after I knocked my microphone down, their generation is way more conservative than in any other generation. So how are you going to be able to reach out to them?
So you're saying Gen Z is more conservative than prior generations?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I know Coy and Justin can agree. I am one of the founders and advisors here at Turning Point at Tech. And just the amount of, especially after Charlie Kirk's death, you saw the movement. It's very strong. Churches
would
were
say
packed that Sunday.
Young men,
Oh, yes.
mostly.
Yes.
Young men. The women, no offense to the females, but they haven't kind of come along in masses yet, but they're on their way. But really, young men have dramatically went to the right, because, I mean, these are guys, we grew up being told our whole lives that there was inherently something wrong with us because we were straight white males. That we were the problem when we had never done anything.
Yeah, I mean, this is the whole reason why Jordan Peterson became a huge thing when we were growing up as teenagers. That whole idea that white men are just evil, we were told that when we were growing up in high school, and got to a point where we've kind of coalesced and gotten tired of it, and kind of showed our passion and showed our conservative without even caring what other people think.
Well, one thing I've observed for years, and a guy got really angry when I said this once, and this was back around 2015, 2016. I made the statement at a town hall. In fact, it was a bunch of doctors. And I said that church attendance was rapidly declining in America. And he got very angry and said I was wrong, but I was right. Church attendance has it's collapsed over the years. But I do see where it is beginning to resurge, particularly among young people. What's happened with women is they've believed this feminist line that they somehow are not valuable to society or even to a spouse unless they have a profession and they work in that profession. That somehow being a mother and a wife is not important, and that you're really a second-rate citizen and maybe even lazy if that's your choice. Well, I can tell you, gentlemen, my wife has a bachelor's degree in nursing. She was in nursing when I married her. And the first thing she told me when we talked about getting married was that she wanted to stay at home and have children and be with her children and be a stay-at-home mom. And we call that a trad wife now. And that was her ambition in life. We've been married 47 years. 47 years. So I think what you're saying is young men are actually doing, what goes around comes around a lot of times. Young men are realizing this lie about feminism, how that's really very toxic to our society. You see our birth rate, we've got, at least among um, non-minorities, has dropped down below into the negative range. We're actually having fewer children than we do just to sustain our population because a lot of people are choosing not to marry and not to have children. But I'm the embodiment of what you say Gen X is about. And I've got to tell you, this is what I recommend to you. If I had it to do over again, this is exactly what I would do. My wife and I are very happy about the choices we made. We raised 4 kids, and they do very well. And we have 6 grandchildren as a result of that. And there's not a single regret that we had this traditional relationship, a Christian relationship. We've always attended church. Church was part of our life, our family, God, our relationship with Jesus Christ. I was saved when I was 11. There's no regrets among any of those things. So what my message is to all of your colleagues in that category is I'm happy to talk about it and to tell you, you can't go wrong doing this, guys. It's the most fulfilling life. And just think about all the other adventures I've been on. You heard me talk about being in the White House. All of that was really whipped cream and a cherry on top of a wonderful life I've lived, and one that's more important than anything. And I'll just tell you parenthetically, back in the 90s, a friend asked me to run for the state Senate, and I was intrigued. I hadn't been in politics. And so I was thinking about it, and just as I drove up into my driveway, I could see through the bay window my son, who was 8 years old at the time. And as usual, he had a bat, he had a glove, and a cap. And why was he doing that? Because he knew as soon as Dad got home, he was going to pitch and catch and hit the ball. And any thoughts of running for office went away. They vanished immediately because I can't leave this to go down to Baton Rouge and spend weeks at a time. Now, once all of my kids were grown and they were in college or in their jobs, then that's when I ran for the U.S. House of Representatives, and I've never turned back. But my most important function in life was being a dad and a husband, and I would challenge you men the same thing.
That's the American dream right there. They tried to say that the American dream was getting some tech job working in a cubicle 100 stories up in New York City. That was the American dream that was sold to the immigrant population we have today and the young generation. But the American dream really was always, be able to have a family and live a happy and prosperous life with that family centered around God, and the government not coming in impeding on that, because in a lot of countries that's what the government does. They don't want you, like in China they did it for years. You couldn't have kids and they didn't want you to have a good family.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that there are campaigns out there that want to categorize me in a different age group category, that somehow I'm unrelatable or I'm irrelevant. I would just caution you about that. That's a campaign technique. That's a lie. It isn't true. It's what's in the man or in the woman, in the case of a woman candidate. It's what's in the person and how they believe and how they've dedicated their life. Their age group, I think, is irrelevant.
Absolutely. So we've got about a couple more minutes, and I just want to say, John Fleming, thank you so much for coming on with us. We've known each other for years. I was lucky to say that he was my congressman for as long as he served, and I will say, we get all this with this politics, and we tend to forget that people who run for office are just people too. And I will say straight up that I've always have admired you, and have always thought that you were a straight up person and someone who had good morals and values, and you've represented Louisiana exceptionally well, no matter what position you've been in. And so we deeply appreciate you and your service to our country in military and politically. You just it means a lot to us, and to have you come on and talk with us for this hour has just been absolutely amazing, and we deeply appreciate it.
Well, and thank you for having me on. And Again, I'm happy to come anytime because I believe that transparency and communication and disclosure is essential when it comes to people in political office. I just witnessed too much that happens behind the scenes. I know y'all don't know this, and we didn't get into this before, but I stood up a transparency website March 31st that you can go and see everything about every public school and charter school in Louisiana on this website. You can see everything about how it operates, the budgets, the expenditures, the performance. We've uncovered things, unfortunately, where people are paying bar bills with taxpayer money and things like that. But to me, it's all about transparency. That brings honesty to government. That brings accountability. And so whether that applies to me as a candidate or as an office holder, I'm always happy to do that. Perhaps I may make a mistake along the way, and I'll just own up to it. But I do the best I can to be the best I can be. But I'm not going to hide anything from you. If mistakes are made, I'm going to be honest with you.
Yes, sir. And I want to say what Parker said as well. We really appreciate you coming on here. I do have one more question if we could squeeze it in, because I do think it's very important considering next week's special session starting on Thursday. It relates to the poll you released on this podcast today. Are you at all concerned with what the legislature will do in this special session regarding closed or open primaries?
Look, guys, anytime you open up the legislative session, you need to brace for what can happen. I'll just give you a quick example. You probably know that Cameron Henry is good friends with Bill Cassidy. And in the last special session, not the last session, I think it was a special session before that, he tried to drop a bill that would take away the primary runoff so that Cassidy could win simply by a plurality. And we had to go in emergency mode because it almost got to the floor and was going to be voted on. It wasn't but for the fact that we went to work and spread the word throughout the state and got phones ringing. And so look for that kind of thing happening here. The plan, as I'm told, is that they're going to leave the Senate alone. It's going to be an April primary and it's going to be a closed primary. But that the House primary will maybe be in July and it will be an open primary. That's the word I get. That's crazy. But I'm very worried about these open primaries. We need to get away from that. That's how we got John Bell.
I've heard this. I've heard that too, and I'm kind of. I don't know if it's. I mean, I guess I'm not a lawyer, but I don't know if it's legal to, if it's federally permissible to have your, if you open your congressional, because they're both federal elections, and you open your Senate. I don't know if you can. It might be one or the other. But again, I don't know that. But it is kind of odd that they're going to open the congressional race, and I guess that has to go in with the map that they have to redraw and the election dates and the Secretary of State not being able to do it closed. But it's very confusing for the voters.
I'm just guessing, but I know this is part of the issue, and that is that if you have an election, because see, there are other elections that are going on too, and how do you have a closed election and an open election a primary at the same time? And so it may be that they moved it to a known, maybe the next primary period, like July, and they go, the only way we can do it is to make it an open primary. Now, if that is true, and again, that's a guess, if it's true, they may have canvassed all of the delegation, Mike Johnson and all of them, and said, would you have a problem with having an open primary? Because they're incumbents. They're not going to have any trouble getting reelected. And if they said, no, we don't have a problem with it, then maybe it'll work out simply because of the problems that are already being created by moving it back and forth. But ultimately, I hope that from now on, they're going to all be closed. That's my prayer anyway.
Yes, sir. Yeah, because opening the primary would, just opens up a whole bunch of can of worms that we've seen so many times where we have sort of, I think we have a lot of conservative people and a lot of conservative leaders in Louisiana who do a great job, yourself being one of them, and you're probably in that category of being one of the most successful. um, Louisiana boys we've had go up and do great things. But I think we also have a lot of bad politicians in Louisiana. A lot of people who claim to be something they're not, and they go and they make a fool of themselves, and then they make a fool of the state. And a lot of the times, those people, they get into office because of the way we pass bills in the legislature that opens it up for them because of the friends they have or the people they know.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, Justin. And I'll give you one great example. And that is, remember that these are the guys virtually unanimously that flipped a Republican district into a Democrat district, that brought Cleo Fields. And the argument that this was about Garrett Graves is a lie. And the argument that this was about following a judge order is a lie. This was done for other reasons, and I won't get into why. All it is to say is that how can you claim to be conservative in MAGA and vote for a Democrat to take the seat when our margin in the House of Representatives is only less than five fingers on a hand? I just don't get that. If you're conservative, then you better vote conservative. But what often happens is people go out with the rhetoric and the advertisements, but then they hope that you don't actually look and see how they vote.
Yeah. We've had Cleo Fields for, I guess, 2 years now, but this better be his last 2 years, because if it's not, and I hear this all the time just being around Republican voters, and we all do, I'm sure, is if Cleo Fields somehow if we allow him to get back into Congress, the Republican voters are going to have a field day with the current state elected officials.
Yes, and to extend this and revise it for just one more step, I do think that when President Trump found out what happened and why, I think he really came down on some people in Baton Rouge. And as you know, he is encouraging all red states to redistrict here in the middle of the decade. And the reason has to do with the fact that the map got fouled up back in 2020. Remember, I told you I was a liaison for the 2020 census. And sometime when we have time, I'll tell you about all of the things that went on with Democrats to undermine our progress and get the proper counts. We didn't get all the districts we were supposed to get because they delayed us until finally the final census was signed by Biden, not Trump, the way it should have been. And Trump is trying to make up for that in the middle of the decade. And the other part of this is, as you know, the Supreme Court had hearings on the 15th, and they're sending signals that they're probably going to wipe away Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, which could mean that we could end up with 20 more Republican districts, because gerrymandering based on race is against the Constitution, the 14th and 15th Amendments.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think this is going to change drastically, that by 2030, you're going to see a totally different kind of map across the country.
We're praying the Supreme Court rules that way. If they do, we're going to have a party.
Absolutely.
That'd be absolute. That would be game changing. Again, how many political analysts have said that the Democrats won't control the Congress for 20 years. It'll be basically wiping it out.
Yes.
Which, not to say that we're coming in and taking it like they have, but that's just the way people vote. We shouldn't have the districts should be nice, and they're condensed, and they're based on population, not based on just giving it to people based on the color of their skin.
Right, and that's honestly what's been happening. There are more Democrat districts than they should be, basically because of racial gerrymandering. And the reason why that was allowed is, let's face it, there used to be literacy tests, there used to be poll taxes, and things done that would prevent African Americans to vote and to run for office. That really happened. I'm old enough to remember that. But those days are long gone. That does not happen anymore. And so the VRA was intended to be a temporary measure. It was not intended as a permanent solution. And that's why they're revisiting that. They're saying, look, you can get, as a black person, you can get a lot of white voters. And I'll give you Elbert Guillory as an example of that, who, by the way, endorsed me. He's on my team. He's very well respected by whites and blacks alike. He's conservative. And he came darn near beating Cleo Fields. So it's clear racial gerrymandering, even if it was ever the right thing to do, is no longer necessary. And we need to reinvoke the Constitution and say, when it comes to race, we're colorblind. When we create these districts, we create them based on, it can be on many things. It could be like communities, it could be based on incumbency, it could be the configuration, or it could be the convenience of the congressman or people in the district. There's a lot of reasons why you may move the borders around, but race is not one of them. That's totally excluded, and I believe that's the finding we're going to hear from the Supreme Court.
We're all
What did they
praying.
say? What did they say? They said in the Supreme Court, the other side, they said like white voters won't vote for black candidates. That's the problem. And it's like, well, no. I mean, you look at former Senator Guillory. He got 38%, I believe, or almost 40% of the vote, and I would venture to say majority of his voters were white because they were from the rural area in between the middle of the two cities.
Right.
And I mean, he easily was very easily close to winning that race. And I mean, I think he had more statewide support got behind him. He didn't have a lot of support coming from elected officials. He was sort of just put out. I mean, the state party supported him, but he was sort of left on his own. But again, another example of us just sort of handing a seat to a Democrat because we don't want to get in for whatever reason. Like us as conservatives don't want to rally behind somebody for whatever reason.
Right, right. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I just don't believe that racism drives these kind of decisions any longer. I think that, but I do understand how Democrats want to continue that. What they want is a permanent, I would say, environment in which, well, this goes back to DEI and CRT. It basically means if you're white, you're automatically a racist. And if you're anything other than white, you're underclass. And that's the way they want to keep it. Why? Because that way the government can always throw benefits to a certain group of people. And but the problem is that doesn't help either side, because if you're a minority person, uh, how does that benefit you when people are looking down on you and your skills and your abilities? They actually uh, the University of Minnesota in their medical school, they did away with final exams or any exams, and they bring people in based on all sorts of racial quotas and all of that. All that is to say that if you're the right group, if you come from the right group of people, you're going to get a degree automatically no matter what you learn in medical school. Well, now think about that. Let's say that you're a black doctor and you've graduated from med school, and you're smart, you know everything, you're a good doctor, but yet people in your exam room are questioning your abilities, right? Because they know that if you're getting preferential treatment, that you're probably a second-rate doctor, maybe a third-rate doctor. So how is this benefiting minorities, whether you're Hispanic or black or whatever? So I think it hurts everybody. It doesn't hurt just
Yeah.
the majority of Americans and majority groups of Americans. I think it hurts most the people who are in the minorities, because then who wants to go to a doctor that they think never had to pass a test in medical school? I know I wouldn't want it. I wouldn't want a pilot that didn't get his certification. Would you?
Yeah,
Abs-
Right?
that
for
that's
sure.
that's a really good point because as a person of color myself, being Hispanic, Mexican, um, I really appreciate the conversation.
Sure.
That you're open to have this dialogue because it's very true.
Yeah.
Even though I'm a person of color, I'm against this whole DEI movement. I
Sure.
don't want to be hired for Southwest, Delta, or American United based off my skin color. I want to
Right.
be hired for these jobs based off my skill sets that I worked hard for.
Right.
Um, I'm not being given a degree. I fought very hard for it after 5 years. Thank goodness. I'm graduating November 15th. So I worked very hard, and like you said, as a person of color, I just don't see. You're right about Democrats putting us down. They want us to make us feel put down because they want us to look up to them when that's not the case. And so I appreciate a candidate like yourself, addressing minority issues such as DEI, stuff like that.
Right. And look, where there are disadvantages in life, whether it's type of school that you may attend or whatever, I think we should always do what we can to compensate for that. But ultimately, it should be a merit-based society. That's the way it has to be in capitalism. So if you're going to fly an airplane, especially a commercial aircraft, you have to earn the right to do that.
Absolutely.
And if I'm going to treat human beings and give them medications and do things to them that could harm them, then I have to earn the right to do that. And it shouldn't matter my skin color or even my political views. All that matters is have I been properly trained and am I qualified? But again, under CRT and DEI, even people like yourself, Gabe, who do everything right, that casts some aspersions upon you. And well, I see you're a person of color. What are you from Minnesota? Did you go? Did you get your flight training in Minnesota, where they don't care if you pass the test? You see the problem, and so I think we do. I think culturally and politically, we do it right here in Louisiana. I think we have our heads on straight here in Louisiana
For
about that.
sure.
And racism, yes, it can pop up at times, I guess. But look, the kind of structured racism that existed in this country back 50 years ago, look, I saw it when it was here, and I admit that it was there. But I do not see that. I haven't seen it in many, many years. And so let's get on past that, and let's
Hmm.
appreciate each other for who we are and how we compete and how we perform, and let's forget about things like skin color and ethnicity. It just doesn't matter when it comes, I think, to upward mobility, achieving things, and serving the people. Let's just let the people who study the hardest, who are the strongest at what they do, and let them
Hmm.
compete in the world like anybody else. And for heaven's sakes, if we're going to have DEI, I'd like to go out for the NBA because maybe there'd be a spot for me there.
That's
I,
why I always
I'd
ask.
Yeah, good point. Good point.
I'd love to play basketball for the NBA, and I'd surely love to get the salary that those guys make. But it would be a disaster. I would admit that.
Yeah, yeah. I think for the Democrats, it's sort of nostalgia is what it is. And I mean, everybody who can pick up a book knows that it was the Democrats who were against ending slavery. It was the Democrats who were mostly in the
Yes.
KKK. Most of your racists, your widespread racists in the history were Democrats, and it's sort of a nostalgia for them because us, if we as a country move past race, they lose. And so they have to stop. They can't let us move past race and stop thinking about it, because the moment we stop thinking about it, they lose because they've been winning on it for so many years and they know that. And so they're like, okay, well, we had power for 40 years, like you said, and most of that was because of these sort of us grouping people together and breaking them apart, and sort of separating them. Well, now that people are starting to try and move away from it, they're losing and they know it. And so they're holding on by a shoestring right now to try and keep race as the main talking
and,
point
and
when it's
that's
not.
and that's why they keep uh, putting this whole persona of that Republicans are racist. They're trying to make that division. Oh, come to us. They're the racist ones. Why are you over there? Like going back to the point, being a person of color, I get more racism from the Democrats than Republicans ever, because they just want to make me feel like, okay, you're just trying to whistleblow and all that stuff, trying to be trying to what's the term for it? I can't think of it, but they think I'm like sucking up to them. Basically, I'm sucking up to Republicans, which
Right.
is completely
Well,
false.
it's gotten so bad, especially under Biden. Remember that if you don't support me, you're not even black.
Hmm.
Now, so what does that mean? That means that if you're a certain race or skin color, that means you have to think a certain way. And by the way, being white and a Democrat, that person's going to dictate to you how you should think, right? So, Gabe, you're a man of color, so you got to stick with people of color here and think the way they do. That's the way the Democrat Party works.
Yeah,
Rather
no,
than giving
stupid.
you credit for having a mind of your own and making decisions for yourself, conservative or liberal, and I think that again, what happens here is that you make certain groups so dependent on you that you can control their votes, and then you get what you want. But in the end, what kind of deal are minorities getting since we've allowed the southern border to open and we create
Hmm.
sanctuary cities? What kind of deal is minorities getting who voted these clowns into office to begin with? I mean, you've got illegal aliens put in five-star hotels at the cost of taxpayers, and meanwhile you have other people out on the street, homeless. And so again, what is this all about? It's all about the mechanics of balloting. Is you've got to get a number of votes, and it's a party with bad ideas, so they have to compensate by doing all these tricks in order to get elected to office. So it's all about power. It's all about connections. It's all about utilizing people or manipulating people to keep them in power. And they'll say whatever they need to say to make that happen. And they'll make you feel guilty if you're not voting the way they think you should.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. So we've kind of go over a little bit, but we do that a lot around here on our podcast. We try to stay within an hour, but then we get in these really good conversations. And it's like we don't want to stop it, so we're 19 minutes over, but it's been great. This has been a great conversation, Dr. Fleming, and we
Great.
appreciate you coming on and taking the time and talking to us and answering sometimes maybe not easy questions. And sometimes with Democrats, they're not popular things that we say. And so we appreciate it, and we wish you the best of luck, especially as being state treasurer, because we need someone to mind the money, and then definitely in your campaign for U.S. Senate.
Well, great, gentlemen. Thank you. I think glad to hear that we're seeing a movement towards conservatism. Again, I would challenge anybody that's in this race or will get into this race to match my conservative credentials. And certainly my goal of always being a servant leader, which I think goes along with my Christian faith. And that's somebody who does listen to what the people have to say. We the people. It's important to me to know what people want, and this carbon sequestration is a good example of that. So anyway, it's always great to be on with you. I'm happy to talk with you anytime and share ideas, and I'm always open to other people's ideas. But you certainly brighten my evening by letting me know that your colleagues are moving both towards Christianity and towards conservatism. That's what I've been praying for a long time, and I've been very disappointed in the past on that.
A lot of it is attributed to Charlie Kirk. I mean, that's a lot
Yes.
of it, especially the political assassination. We've talked about this multiple times. A lot of our conversations are around spiritual aspects. We're all involved in politics to all degrees. We have uh, all, doing different things for the state party, but that's the majority of what we talk about is a spiritual aspect and trying to carry on what Charlie was doing and reaching younger people. And since then, it's been astounding to see these young people show up to church and wanting to worship and wanting to open that dialogue about having an intimate relationship with Jesus Christ. That's what it is. It's a relationship with Jesus, and they're wanting it
Yes.
now. They're craving it, and they're
Great.
craving the truth. We're seeing church parking lots full for the first time, and I can tell you, I've been going. I could probably count on one or two hands the number of times I've missed going to church. I mean, family vacations. We go on vacation, bam, we go to church on Sunday morning. Just because we're on vacation, it didn't stop it.
Yeah.
And we're seeing them filled and the pews filled, and it's just been amazing seeing how God has been working these
Yes.
past couple of months in our
Right.
country. And thank God. That we give all thanks to God and praise to Him, because it's a God thing. It has nothing really to do with Charlie Kirk. It really has nothing to do with anybody who has a platform. It is 100% God.
Yes. And Charlie was wise way beyond his years. I mean, you talk about, different age groups here and different, Gen Xers versus boomers and all that. But I can tell you, this is a guy, he might as well have been 80 years old because he had the experience of a man 80 years old. You could tell, even though he's only 31. I know he studied a lot of philosophies and everything. He kind of reminds me of the founding fathers. Remember, they were very steeped in philosophy, not just political, but religious philosophy. And they were really Charlie Kirk's age, your age, when they founded our country, most of them. And so we need more of that. But you don't have to be 80 and you don't have to be 30. You can have that wisdom, and the Lord can lead you in whatever direction necessary to make that happen.
All right, y'all. We thank you so much, Dr. Fleming, for coming on. Guys, y'all have anything else that y'all want to say real quickly? All right.
Just-
Thank
Appreciate
you so much,
you
sir.
guys.
Yeah,
Thank you
thank
so
you,
much.
Dr. Fleming.
And thank y'all for
Thanks, sir.
tuning in. And we look forward to
Good luck.
seeing y'all next week. Thank y'all.
Super. All right. Thanks.